The sun beat down mercilessly on the gleaming streets of Dubai, where skyscrapers pierced the clouds and luxury cars hum past in silence. But beneath all that grandeur, crouched beside an overflowing bin outside a shopping plaza, was Ifunanya, a 30-year-old Nigerian and Dubai's invisible cleaner, dressed in an orange sanitation uniform stained by hours of toil. She worked with quietly dignity, sweeping the gutters and whispering prayers under her breath. Ifnaya didn't always dream of sweeping foreign streets. She had studied agricultural economics back in Nigeria, but like so many, her degree had gathered dust, while bills had heartbreak piled high. With two younger siblings depending on her and a mother recovering from a stroke, Dubai wasn't just an escape, it was her battlefield. Every grain of sand she swept was a step towards survival. One blistering afternoon, as she cleaned the corner near a Ritz coffee shop, her eyes caught movement in the shadows behind a trash bin. Curious, she stepped closer. A child, no older than 5, sat crouched behind the dumpster. Her clothes were dusty, shoes mismatched, and in his tiny hands he clutched a crumpled burger he had finished from the garbage. "Hey, baby," she whispered gently, approaching slowly like one would frighten bird. "You shouldn't eat that, you'll get sick." The boy blinked up at her like with large eyes that sparkled despite the grime on his face. He didn't speak, he just kept chewing, tears mingling with ketchup smears on his cheek. If Naya had split into two, she didn't know where his parents were or why such a child would be left alone. But she wouldn't walk away. She knelt beside him, tore open her food flask, leftover jollof rice from the hostel, and handed it to him. "Eat this instead. I made it myself." The boy hesitated, then took the food. He ate in silence, eyes still fixed on her like she was both a stranger and a miracle. When he finished, he clung to her sleeve. She stayed with him until evening, combing nearby shops to ask if anyone recognized him, but no one had ever seen him before. When security guards arrived, she handed the boy over to him trembling hands, scribbling her name and number in case he needed help again. As they drove off with him in a black van, she watched the tail light fade and whispered a prayer to God. Let him be safe. Let him find home. What she didn't know, what no one could have guessed, was that the entire thing had been staged. Cameras hidden, actors planted. The boy wasn't homeless. He was Emir Naha, only son of Zaya Naha, the Emirati Nigerian CEO of Naha International Holdings, a powerful man who believed characters was the only true currency. Zaya had recently received reports of abuse, dishonesty and exploitation among the city's domestic and low-income workers. He wanted to test humanity, not regimes. And so, Emir was coached and placed under surveillance, tasked to become invisible and see who among the workers of Dubai would stop to help a child in need. When Ifnai gave away her only food and stayed with Emir, not knowing who he was, she passed a test that no university degree or job interview could prepare for. Zaire watched the footage later that night, his son clutching the woman's hand, the honest panic in her eyes. The prayer whispered to the sky, and something in his heart shifted. "Find her," he said. The following day, Ifnai woke before dawn as usual. She tied her hair into a scarf, slipped on her uniform, and packed a small container of rice and stew for lunch. Life hadn't changed, but she felt different. The little boy's face lingered in her mind. She hoped he was somewhere safe, not back in the streets. Unknowing to her, a sleek black SUV had been tailing her since 6 o'clock a.m. Two men in black suits watched her every move, from the way she gave up her seat to an elderly woman on the metro, to how she greeted her co-workers in Yoruba, Hausa, Tagalog, and broken Arabic. By noon, Ifunanya had become a subject of intense interest at Ahanaya quarters. Surveillance teams compiled her footage. Investigators pulled up her file. Zaya watched in silence. No record of complaint, said one staff. She had been sending half to her salary back to Nigeria every month. Another added, she cleaned the same building you opened last year. Quite consistent. Kind. That evening, as Ifunanya swept near the plaza suit, a man approached her holding a delicate cream envelope. He eyed him with suspicion. He smiled, bowed slightly, and said, Madam Ifunanya, you are requested at our Naha Tower VIP lounge. Transportation will be arranged. It's not a joke offer. It's a conversation. She laughed. Me? VIP lounge? Do I look like a madam to you? But the man only nodded, stepped back, and said gently, sometimes the palace finds its queen in the marketplace. Then he left, leaving her holding the invitation like it might explode. That night she didn't sleep. What if it was a scam? What if someone was trying to traffic her? But the envelope had real gold foil on the edges. The number printed on the black led to an actual corporate office. Finally, she prayed, kissed her cross, and said, God, if this is my lifting, don't let me miss it. The next morning, dressed in her cleanest native attire, a simple Ankara gown with faded seams, Ifunanya entered a private elevator of Anam Tower. A woman in a navy suit guided her with reverence, offering her water and asked about her family. Ifunanya kept blinking, unsure if she was dreaming. Then the door opened. There stood Zaanaha in a crisp white kandura, beside his son Emir, now dressed in pristine school uniform. Emir ran to her and hugged her legs. Auntie Naya, he cried, I told Baba you were kind. Ifunaya's jaw dropped. The CEO of one of the biggest firms in the UAE was standing in front of her, smiling. You fed my son when the world looked away. Zaya said solemnly, and you never asked for anything. That, Ifunanya, is what leadership looks like. Compassion, no camera. Now, tell me, how do you want to change the world? Because today we begin. Ifunanya didn't know whether to kneel, scream, or faint. She stood frozen, her hands trembling. Sir, I'm just a cleaner, she whispered, voice shaking. I didn't do anything special, but Zaya's gaze was steady. You are human in a world where it's easier not to be. That is the rarest thing. He offered her a seat beside him. They sat like equals, overlooking the skyline. He asked about her life, why she came to Dubai, what she wanted for her future. For the first time in years, Ifunanya spoke about dreams she had locked away. She wanted to open a safe haven for women like her, a shelter, a school, something. By the end of the conversation, Zaya had already drafted a plan. We will start with a scholarship foundation in your name. We will lead it. I will fund it. What? She stammered. I told you, he said gently. You are no longer just a cleaner. You are a builder of life. Days later, the media exploded. CEO honors street cleaner with leadership role. Headlines read, Ifunaya's story traveled from Dubai to Lagos, to Accra, to London. People from her hometown sent voice notes screaming her name. Girls began calling her Auntie Naya, the Hope Woman. Not everyone celebrated. Some colleagues whispered she had used charm. Others said she was secretly dating the CEO. A few mocked her accent, her clothes, her village ways. But Ifunanya walked through it all with grace. I sweep shame with my broom, she said once, smiling. So gossip cannot stain me. Her foundation launched in 6 weeks. The Naya Trust offered training. mentorship, housing, and microloans to female workers in low-income jobs. The launch event held in Burj Park had 700 guests, including ambassadors, artists, and sanitation workers. Ifunanya stood at the podium in a flowing gown that is blue and trembling. She held a microphone and told her story of selling akara in Lagos, of failed job interviews, of mopping blood in hotel hallways, and of the day she met a boy behind a trash bin. Kindness is not just a strategy, it is a seed, she ended. And if you plant it, God will water it, even in desert like Dubai. After the speech, people lined up just to hug her. Mothers cried, men clapped. Zaya stood silently in the corner, watching his investment in goodness bloom. Amir held her hand proudly, whispering, "You are my hero." And Tenaya, she smiled, tears slipping down her cheek. The woman who once slept on a mattress with springs poking her ribs was now in talks with the Dubai Chamber of Commerce. She hired other cleaners, legal immigrants, abandoned women, single mothers, and gave them roles as coordinators, administrators, and caretakers. Still, Ifunanya never forgot the beam behind which Emir hid. Sometimes, she returned to that very spot with a fresh meal, just in case another lost child sat there unseen. She knew now. Being a queen didn't always require a crown. Sometimes it requires a heart, a broom, and a little faith. The chorus started pouring in. UN women wanted her for a conference in Geneva. A Nigerian senator asked if she would return home to speak at an education summit. Even Oprah's team sent a "We love you" story email, but Ifunanya remained grounded. "I will go," she told her assistant, "but only after our shelter in Shagars is fully ready." One morning, she visited the first safe home they opened. Just 3 rooms in an old villa donated by an Emirati widow. There, she met Jumoke, a 19-year-old cleaner from Ibadan, who had been beaten by her employer. Ifunanya sat with her, held her hand and said, "You will heal, you will rise." But no stories had happy endings. One of her earliest recruits, Marianne, died of pneumonia after being denied hospital treatment by her employer. Ifunanya broke down that night. She sobbed in the lap of her foundation legal advisor. "I couldn't save her," she wept. "What's the point of all this if I still lose them?" "You didn't lose her," the employer and lawyer said. "You are building a world where the next Mary Ann will live." That night, Ifunanya announced the Miriam Medical Trust Fund. The next month, they secured emergency health access for 30 plus domestic workers across Dubai. Meanwhile, Emir, the boy who started it all, was growing into a fine young lad. He's often sneak into Ifunanya's office after school. One day, he shyly handed her a card. "You saved me. Someday, I will save you back." She kissed his forehead. "You already have." Zaya, proud but cautious, remained in the background. He didn't want the world to think he had handed her success. One evening, he told her, "You've made more impact in 8 months than most people do in a lifetime. But remember, fame fades. Impact doesn't." She nodded. "I know, sir. That's why I'm not just that's why I'm just being careful." With her growing recognition, she started getting threats too. Anonymous messages, warning from exploiters who saw her foundation as a disruption. "Stay in your lane," one email said. "You are just a cleaner." Ifunanya printed that email, framed it, and hanged it on her office wall with a note. "And yet, I made a highway." One day, her mother called from Nigeria, voice trembling with pride. "Naya, they are using your picture in church. The pastor said you are proof that favor finds the lowly." Ifunanya wept. It has been years since her mother sounded that strong. "I just want you to be proud of me, Mama," she whispered. Her biggest test came when the Dubai municipality invited her to submit a proposal for a sanitation reform policy. She was to present before 27 stakeholders, including government officials. I'm not a politician, she told her team, but I'm a cleaner and I know what we need. Her voice cracked, but her resolve didn't. The presentation was electric. She proposed safer uniforms, emergency shelters for exploited workers, and compulsory rest days. She ended with a slide of a little boy behind a trash bin. We can build a city where no child eats from garbage. But first, we must clean more than the street. We must clean our hearts. The applause was thunderous. She cried. Some nodded in silence. And by the end of the week, her proposal was approved, unanimously. Dubai would become the first Gulf city to implement a protection policy for low-wage workers, and the initiative would be named after her, the Ifunanya Worker Dignity Act. Her life became a balancing act between leadership, compassion, and staying true to herself. She still rode the metro when she could. She still hugged sanitation staff and called them "my people." She even kept her old broom in her new office, mounted on the wall like a sword. It reminded her where she started. Meanwhile, Emir's bond with her deepened. He insisted she attend his school recital. "You are my second mama," he said boldly. Ifnai wept through the entire performance. That night, Zaya invited her to dinner. "I have been thinking," he said slowly. "What this world needs is more queens like you. Not just in heart, in law, in policy, in power." He wasn't proposing marriage, but something deeper, a partnership. He wanted her to co-lead a global division of his company focused on social equity. "We will build programs for women, for migrants, for the unseen." Ifunanya looked at him, stunned. "Me? From the gutters of Ajegunle to this?" He nodded. The palace never forgets the woman who swept the floor and planted seeds. That night, she signed the papers. The same woman who once begged for overtime to send money home was now the executive director of human equity programs, overseeing 10 countries. But she didn't let power change her. She still cooks her own egusi soup. She still answers every email from girls asking how to survive. She still wore her Ankara skirt to meeting, saying, "This is not backward. This is heritage." Her authenticity made her unstoppable. 3 years later, the foundation had helped 15,000 women. She was honored by the UN, recognized by Forbes, and featured on the front page of the New York Times. But she still visited the plaza behind the trash bin every month, leaving food and flowers for the child who changed everything. One day, Emir, now 10, asked, "Auntie Naya, do you think you were just sent for me?" She smiled. "No, my baby. I think you were sent for me, to remind me that kindness is the highest calling of all." Then she nodded. "And because of you, I found my voice." At the opening of the new Women's Resource Center in Lagos, she gave her most famous speech. "There was a day I was just a cleaner, but that day I became a queen. Not because someone crowned me, but because I chose to serve even when no one was watching. We rise not by status, but by service." And so, the girl who once swept Dubai streets became a queen, not of a throne, but of heart. Ifeanyi didn't just clean a road, she cleared path for others. She didn't just find a boy in the trash, she found her destiny, and the world would never forget her name.